Hey guys, what's going on? Your old buddy Tim back in the Revolved studio with my old buddy, my new old buddy. I've actually known of you for years, and we've met multiple times over the years, but it's the first time we've ever hung out. Stan McDonald with Jacob Title. How are you?
I am great and good to be here with you
You
today.
are.
I've seen you
this.
before on these shows. You're pretty popular, you know.
Well,
and I'm glad to be here.
I'm very popular among older ladies.
Yeah.
So, we do this down there. But you know, I was telling you beforehand, you are probably the best dressed guest I've ever had.
Well,
you rival.
I'm
me.
having to keep up with you. I'll tell you that.
Well, when you dress like this, every time you walk through Bravo, people want you to refill their tea glass. So, anyway, good to have you here. You are here. We're going to talk about the title process and that sort of thing when closing a real estate deal. Before we do that, I think everybody probably knows of you, but give us some background. You actually started on Old McDonald's farm.
Well, that's true. I was born and raised what is actually where Bridge Street presently is. I don't know if you knew that or not. We were farmers. My dad was a big cotton farmer. We farmed in the Greenbrier area, around the airport, around the home place we called it, where Bridge Street presently is. We sold that back in 95 or 97, I think, I forget which, to the city of Huntsville. So, you know, I grew up in a farming family. I went to Butler High School. My father was a state senator, later became Commissioner of Agriculture, so it planted an interest on my part in politics. I was a very young guy who worked in the Governor Guy Hunt's administration. At age 25, I was his deputy chief of staff.
Oh, you are dating yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
That was a while ago.
And then I also was his youngest cabinet member. I was the commissioner of revenue while down there. And I went to law school at night during that time. We started a big family. We have 7 children.
Wow. What are their ages?
27 through 15.
Okay.
28 through 15.
You've got those little bitty ones. At our age, those little bitty ones can be the death.
Well, that 15-year-old is the last one. You know, the last one's still at home, but they're a humongous blessing, of course. And after finishing law school, came up here in Huntsville and started a law practice. Really been doing real estate closings, real estate law for the past 25 years.
Okay. And you spent some time on the bench? As
yes,
a judge?
I was probate judge in Limestone County for 2 years. I was appointed by the governor to fulfill the unexpired term of a retiring probate judge. After 2 years, it became either continuing the judgeship or keep the business going, and really I chose the private sector business interest that we have.
Yeah. Well, I know you're still somewhat involved in politics. You fill in for our pal Dale Jackson on that show, and I hear you on there. So any thoughts of a side show?
Yeah, we have thought about that. Yeah, I enjoy being on there, and myself and a couple others, you know, we're on there with Dale pretty regular. We talk, you know, I'm one of the conservative commentators, Republican consultant, they call me, you know, but I've just been involved in, like I said, my dad kind of gave me the beginnings, and I've been involved in more races and campaigns than I care to even remember.
Yeah.
But I'm like the guy behind the scenes.
Yeah, well, we could do a whole show on politics. I don't talk politics, but I have my opinions. Let's put it that way. Let's talk about what we're here to talk about, and that is you own Jacob Title. Tell folks what Jacob Title does.
Well, Jacob Title is a title and closing business. So when you're buying or selling a home or refinancing, making any kind of real estate conveyance or real estate work, then we can help you. There's actually Stan McDonald, attorney at law. I have 2 attorneys that work with me there and a paralegal, but we also have Jacob Title, which we do the closing process. As I have staff of about 9 or so people there, and like I said, been doing this for 20-something years, probably done thousands of closings, represented investors, buyers and sellers from all sides of the table.
Well, that's one of the things in my business, a question I get a lot is the whole closing process, there's some mystique to it because folks just don't know what's involved and everything that is covered and that sort of thing. First of all, explain why that closing process is required to protect everyone as far as property ownership goes.
Okay, well,
it'd be kind of the Wild West without closing attorneys.
Yeah, it really would. They kind of keep things in order, if you will.
Yeah.
And I'll say this kind of humorously to get the listener's attention. Just think about at the closing, it's all about the money. All right. Now, what I mean by that is, of course, the seller, they want to make sure they get their money.
Sure.
Okay. And the buyer, of course, they want to make sure that they get the money necessary or have the money necessary to buy the property. And of course, when it's all said and done, the closing attorney or the title company is really the administrator of the process. They're making sure that there's what we like to call the sanctity of the contract. The contract is like the Bible, if you will. It really spells out what the buyer is going to get and what they're going to do and what the seller is going to get and what they're going to do.
Right.
Basically what it is one party gives money to the other for a deed to land, property. That's it, basically. But believe you me, there are many either moving parts or potential moving parts. There are things that can go wrong. And, you stick the attorney, the title agent, sticks by the contract, makes sure that it's adhered to. At the end of the day, what the buyer walks out with is a good deed and good title, meaning they have the quiet, peaceful, uninterrupted enjoyment of the property that they bought. It's been legally described. That's specific. You got to know what the boundary lines are, and they need to know what they can do with their land. Of course, there may be covenants and restrictions, all these things, and of course the buyer. The seller. They want to make sure they have a good check,
right?
Good funds.
Yeah. And does it really come down to, though? I mean, the money is important, but you are making sure there is, would you call it clear title on a property? If someone is attempting to sell a piece of property or a home, you've got to make sure they've got the legal right to do so.
Well, that's exactly right. And part of what goes into that, like I said, they want to walk out of the closing. The buyer does make sure they have peaceful, uninterrupted, quiet title enjoyment of what they have paid for. Now, one of the first things we do when we get a contract, we do a lot of legal research and find out what is the history of that land. We call it a title search or a land search.
How far back do you have to go?
Well, sometimes it just depends. Every closing is different. Sometimes we go back just 40 years. I mean, there's such thing as going back 80 years or 100 years.
Does Limestone County, is it they go back to Methuselah looking for title work?
Yeah, they really do.
I think they do. I've heard that.
Back, yeah. But, we go back and search the title because you never know. There could be unknown parties or unattended to legal claims, which may be what we call attached to the property.
Like liens on the property?
Liens on the property. There's such things as sometimes we find heirs, missing heirs, people who own an interest in the property and maybe didn't realize they had an interest in the property. And simply, let me put it like this. A deed is a conveyance. And when we do a deed at the closing table, anybody who has any interest whatsoever, and notice I said any interest whatsoever in a property, needs to sign that deed.
Is that an ownership interest?
Well, it's an ownership interest, but there's other types of interest. There's a security interest. In other words, a lender has a security interest. There's also things called like a marital interest. If you've lived there as husband and wife, and one of the spouses really is on the deed and owns the deed, the other spouse has to sign, because in Alabama, if it's your marital dwelling, even if you're not on the deed, you have what's known as a marital interest. So there's all kind of ownership interest or security interest, or sometimes there's an interest in a future lawsuit, for goodness sakes.
Really?
Oh, yeah, or there's a contractual interest. There's all kind of, and you have to search and find and make sure that when that buyer walks out the door, that nobody is going to have any standing to interfere with your peaceful, quiet enjoyment of what you've.
Is that a legal term? Peaceful,
it
quiet
is,
enjoyment?
Yes, yeah, peaceful, quiet enjoyment.
It's
called fee simple
song.
title.
Yeah,
peaceful, easy feeling.
That's it. Yeah. So maybe that should be the theme song in your commercials.
Of Jacob Title.
Yeah,
we won't let you down.
A man of
because I'm already standing on the ground.
See. You're welcome. That's a free marketing tip.
Thank you,
but I want to go back to that marital thing, because I think a lot of people believe, okay, I own a house. My name is on the deed. I'm paying the mortgage. I get married. My wife comes in. Well, thank you. Like 26, 27 years ago. But I get married. My spouse moves in. You're saying that even though their name is not on the deed,
right,
and they really had no interest on the house prior to us getting married, that they do have rights now.
Well, they have
I think a lot of people will find that scary.
Well, it's interesting, and they acquire, the first time they spend the night together in that home, their marital residential dwelling, the spouse not on the deed acquires a marital interest.
Wow.
Now, there's a lot of places we can go with that discussion, and I'm not sure we're going to go everywhere with it. But suffice it to say, there's two kinds of conveyances. There's a deed which conveys ownership, and yes, that spouse the spouse who's not legally on title would have to sign a deed to convey. There's another type of conveyance, and you've heard me say it's a mortgage. Sometimes when people might want to get cash out on their house or something, they have to give a mortgage to the bank. And here's something I will say, and listeners, hear this because a lot of you need to hear this because it comes up a lot. If you're getting a refinance or you're getting a mortgage against your house for cash, maybe to renovate or something like that, and you say, well, only one of us is on the deed, so only one of us is qualifying for the loan, and only one of us is, has a job and maybe is going to, pay for the thing. We're going to have that non-borrowing spouse who's not on title sign anyway, because anybody who has an interest whatsoever in the house, even if it's a marital interest, has to sign the mortgage because the mortgage is a conveyance. Now, you might say, does that mean that this non-borrowing spouse, God forbid, if there was a divorce, that means that they absolutely own half of it? No, it doesn't mean that at all. That'll be up to it. Again, God forbid, but a judge to decide one day. Does it mean, 50% ownership? There's a lot of things it doesn't mean. What it does mean is that basically a non-borrowing spouse who's not on the deed, they can't have that property, their home residential dwelling, deeded out from under them without knowledge, or mortgaged out from under them without knowledge. Now, you or I wouldn't do this, but some men out there might get a mortgage to buy a bass boat without telling their wives. And
you pay cash. I know you.
No, I just wouldn't get a bass boat. I probably would get, I don't know, but some good hunting shotguns or something.
There you go.
Take out a second mortgage for that.
So let's kind of put this over to what I do. I've got a client. He wants me to list his house, divorce situation. The wife is gone. She was never on the mortgage, the deed, or any of the paperwork, but she lived in the house for a period of time. Now that she's gone, is she a concern when it comes to title?
Well, that was handled during the divorce.
Okay. Should have been handled.
Yes, it should have been. And, competent divorce attorneys, which there are many of them, would do that. That would be an important thing.
Yeah.
Now,
keyword being competent.
Now, we've got a closing today where the divorce is not final yet, so that presents a whole different scenario. But where it's finalized, the issue of the residential dwelling is addressed in the divorce decree.
Okay. So when
but to answer your question, it has to be addressed because the spouse, yes, does have a
because they could then come
interest.
back and lay some kind of claim or
absolutely
what have you.
They could. And what they'll do at the end of a divorce, the one who doesn't get the house will sign a quit claim deed. Quit claim deed is a deed where. Yeah, and do we remember the Beverly Hillbillies?
We do.
Where one time I think Jed Clampett was given a quit claim deed to the Golden Gate Bridge, I think, and that's lawful because all the quit claim deed is, it says I'm deeding to you whatever interest I might happen to have in the property.
Right.
Well, if I don't happen to have any interest in the property, there's nothing wrong with that. So, but anyway, a spouse will. Quit claim deed, a divorced spouse who gets nothing is going to quit claim deed or deed away anything that she might would have.
Right. As a realtor, should I ask my clients in the divorce, was there a quit claim?
Well, yes. You'd want to see you'd want to see the divorce decree. Now, that's something that a good realtor, that's the only kind you hang around with.
You would hope.
But a good realtor, will ask a few of the introductory questions maybe, and just try to understand. Because every closing is different, every closing has some different dynamics. But candidly now, if they don't ask that, that's something that our closing coordinator...
You're going to catch.
Yes, we're going to catch that. We always appreciate a heads up.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with like a bankruptcy or you're dealing with a recent divorce.
That's what I was going to ask.
Like
how
that.
often do you have to literally go back to the buyer or the seller, if you will, and say, okay, we found this over here that they weren't aware of. I mean, that happens
1 out of 5 times, just to give you a number.
So 20%, which is still a good number,
right?
When you look at it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. So from a seller's point of view, if I've sold my house, you guys are doing my title work. My main concern is that you don't find anything that's going to encumber that, whether it be liens or past ownership or that sort of thing. And I would assume you guys search all kinds of legal records,
Right.
entitlement, you go back in the chain and that sort of thing.
That's right. Yeah, and a lot of it these days is, or more and more of it is online. It doesn't always go back quite as far as you need for it to go back.
It's a lot easier now, I would think.
It's a lot
thanks to
easier than it used to be. It used to be just, when I started, it was going down the courthouse or literally going to the big old books. Still some of that, not as much
Right.
of it.
From the buyer standpoint, I would think from the buyer standpoint, the whole point of this is you are really kind of protecting them to make sure that the property they're buying is unencumbered, good to go. They're getting the good clear title where they could go get a good night's sleep. That's
right.
That's their main concern. Now, if issues do come up, let's say you've done a title search and you found there was a cousin who owns a piece of it. How do you have to go to that cousin?
You
and
go
say,
to
hey,
that cousin
can
and
we-
ask them to sign a quit claim deed.
Right.
Anything that you might own possibly, or that might be, it's some theory how you might own it, go ahead and just deed that away.
And are they?
It
I would
clears the
assume
title.
they're not out of line for asking for some kind of compensation for that.
That's right. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But
Yeah.
sometimes you encourage them by giving them $100 check.
Give them
just to-
something.
Yeah. That's called clearing title or curing title. Let me backtrack with you just a minute. When a buyer walks out of that closing, what they have been given is a deed, and it's a general warranty deed. A warranty deed, not a quit claim deed, but a warranty deed is what your buyers want.
Right. That shows ownership to that.
Right, and it carries within it, we learned at law school, and I won't be able to recite all 7 of these.
Wow.
But it carries, every general warranty deed carries with it 7 promises. 7 promises. And that's what the buyer wants. Now, if the buyer finds out later that somebody is interfering with their quiet, peaceful enjoyment of the property, then they're going to come back to the seller because the seller made 7 express promises in that deed. Okay? So they'll come back to the seller. Now, by the way, both buyer and seller will be unhappy at that time, and they may come back to the closing concern.
Right.
And they may say, you assisted me in making these 7 promises, and I was the administrator of things. And as administrator, you're there to make sure the promises are met, kept, and fulfilled.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That's
what we do.
Well, it does, because you can be the most thorough title company in the world, and every now and then there may be something that slips through and comes back on the purchaser of that property, and he's going to look for some reason why. How do you normally?
And by the way, that's why there's title insurance.
Yeah.
And
Explain title insurance.
Well, lenders require title insurance because of the very reason that I just said. It's possible that there's human error.
Sure.
But even sometimes it's not even human error. There are certain things that lurk or linger out there that are dormant, that don't even show up on records. Okay, that it was nobody's failure actually, and so lenders require the purchase of title insurance so that if something comes up and there's a problem, then it pays it will pay the claim.
Right. Maybe someone comes up with a legal document that was never filed somewhere.
Something that's a little more that actually happened here in Huntsville, Alabama about maybe 10 time flies. I'll say 10, 15 years ago now. And I won't name names, but
Oh, come on, Steve.
well, some of the people who are in the biz are going to know the name.
Yeah.
But it was a very, very large builder, and they weren't paying their subcontractors. And stop, because I think you know the name. And they weren't paying the subcontractors, and so when a subcontractor doesn't get paid, there's certain processes that they have to go through to finally get a lien on your property. But what happened was a lot of houses were actually built and sold and inhabited by new buyers before the process allowed the subcontractors to ever place any kind of notice on the property. So they were enjoying their home peaceably and happily. 2 months after they moved in, and all of a sudden a lien shows up.
Right.
And it's a valid lien. Because the person who put the brick on the house never got paid.
Right.
Or the person who put the roof on the house never got paid. These are called mechanics and materialman liens. And sometimes they're lurking. Now, adjustments have been made since that time, and now the title insurance that we offer at the closing table would actually cover for that.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's other parts of the state where they don't do that because they haven't got burned yet, like we did in Huntsville, Alabama
Right.
about 15 years
Yeah.
ago.
So if the title insurance did not take care of that, it would be up to the homeowner to settle that lien?
Well, when the homeowner got ready to try to convey the property away,
It would come up.
somebody would have an interest in it. That's
Right.
your friendly bricklayer. And when you call them and say, would you want to convey away? Would you assist us in conveying away this deed or mortgage? Say yes after you pay me.
Right. Yeah.
So there were a lot of lawsuits back then.
Yeah.
Good for the lawyers, bad for the homeowners.
There was a house in Decatur that my daughter Chelsea was actually to look at buying. It was one of those buddy handshake deals.
Yeah.
A guy just bought a house from his buddy
Yeah.
without doing title work.
Yeah. that's
And
scary.
there came back, I think there were probably a half dozen liens against it, and he couldn't do anything with the house because he couldn't settle those liens. So
And I bet you his buddy couldn't make it good or couldn't make it right. You know, the insurance company is the deep pockets. You know, if you're going to do business with somebody
yeah,
and something goes wrong,
yeah,
if they don't have any money,
yeah,
even if they're the most honest person in the world and they want to make it right, you know the old saying about blood out of a turnip.
right, yeah.
Well, I mean, there is blood in the turnip of the insurance company. You know, so
Well, his buddy was not the most honest person
Yeah,
at the
okay.
end of the day. So,
okay. Well, I was hoping that maybe he'd want to make it right, but even if he didn't,
he didn't. He basically said, you know, you bought it, your problem, and the liens were, I don't know, thousands and thousands of dollars that the guy didn't have.
yeah. So with
And
buddies like that,
therefore-
who needs enemies?
Exactly right. So he could not sell the property as long as those were
That's exactly
outstanding.
right. And so, yeah, I mean, that guy's really, really stuck.
Yeah. Could the person that went, and Chelsea just walked away from it, but if I was an investor, could I go in and negotiate those liens down and
Yes.
pay them off when I buy
Yes, you
that
could.
property? So
You
that could have
could.
been an option.
And I'm not going to try to be too expressly self-serving on this show, but that's the kind of thing that
Feel
it would
free.
take. Well, I mean, we've done that kind of thing before, where some investors come to us and say, "Oh my goodness, this thing is just wrapped up in a maze of all kind of problems."
Right.
And you know, they'll hire us, of course, but at the end of the tunnel, there is a rainbow sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, we've helped people, you know, do real well because but you have to go to each and every one of these creditors or lien holders and explain the situation.
Yeah.
And say, you know, this property's going nowhere. You know, you're, 6 inches away from a bankruptcy where you're going to get flushed and lose everything. And so I know you're owed $18,000, but we've got a plan right here that gets everybody out. And you want to take your $6,000 by 5 o'clock this Friday and be on
Right.
your way.
Yeah.
And we explain to them it's either take that or get nothing. And oftentimes, maybe if they see we have a plan and we're experienced in negotiating these things, then we can get an investor.
Do you ever do, for example, closings on, let's say someone's going through a bankruptcy and they're selling the property to try to help liquidate and get out of there?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
does that really hamper the process at all, or is it still just the same?
Well, it adds 2 or 3 steps, and
Because if he's
usually,
got people coming after him,
right,
Yeah.
oftentimes, in your scenario, oftentimes there is a bankruptcy trustee involved, and we just have to work through them. And I'd give kudos to our local bankruptcy trustees; they're actually pretty great to work with. But yeah, we do deal with bankruptcies. We started the business a few years ago. It's not as active now, but it was very active about 5, 6 years ago. It was called short sale negotiations because a lot of houses were underwater, and we were finding out that people couldn't sell their houses because they owed more on it than it was worth. And so we started a separate business where we would call creditors, lenders all the time and say, look, they got to sell this house. They're moving out of the area. They've got a new job. It can only go for 120, but they owe 140. And you better believe that we learned a lot of the, I guess, the nuances of how to speak to people in that regard.
yeah, it can be a tough situation. Well, let's talk about in the time we've got left about Jacob Title. You've been doing this how many? Long time.
25 years.
Yeah, so
Jacob
you've done a
Title.
few.
Yes, yeah, we have.
Tell us about Jacob Title and everything that you guys offer. And
Now, I used to be a part of a really good statewide. I was the president of a statewide title company for many, many years. But it was about 4 years ago now that I decided to start one, totally on my own. And we are in an expansive mode. And this one is just, owned by myself. But it's Jacob Title.
Explain the name. Who is Jacob?
Well, Jacob it's a little bit of a sad story, Tim, but it's still rejoiceful and triumphant anyway. Jacob was a child that we lost.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
at birth. But we really loved his name because it's connected greatly to the promises
Well, that's what I was
to
thinking.
Christians and believers in the Old Testament. And Jacob, although he was favored by God, and it wasn't necessarily based on all of his own works, but it was based upon many promises. And one of those promises, of course, was land ownership, acquiring property. That's one of the great things that was promised. So I won't drill in too much in religious talk here,
Sure.
but suffice it to say, there's a lot in a name, and we're proud of that name.
Yeah, good
Jacob
deal.
Title.
Good deal. Well, I know you guys do a lot of business. Where are you located? Where do you do your closings? I know you'll come close wherever I happen to be. Which
Yeah,
is
we
kinda
try to be
nice.
extremely user friendly. That's just part of it. So we will close remotely. We'll close at the realtor's office. We'll close, at outside remote settings. But our office, and we do have a nice office that you can close at, and we're on
Nicer than this?
Well,
Look at that hardwood there.
It's comparable. It's comparable. But we're Jacob Title is on Shoney Drive, right off the Parkway. Right across the street from us is Avadian Credit Union. We're kind of, you'd say, across the street from like Joe Davis Stadium and the Applebee's there. There's a lot of other real estate businesses right there in that area.
There
Keller
are.
Williams Realtor, I think, is in there too.
Yep. So, final thoughts to folks about if they are selling their home or they're looking to sell. Are there things that they need to be aware of, knowing that everything is going to go through title? But are there any red flags you would think a seller might be aware of or look for?
A seller just needs to, they're probably going to know what Tim, I know you teach a lot of things and instruct, and I think one of the things they talk about the 3 Ds. What is it? Debt, death, and divorce. I guess those three things can sometimes be the trigger points for past title problems. In other words, if the property was part of the estate or is in an estate right now, if you're an heir selling it for your deceased parents or something like that, then there's a lot of extra steps.
Which we do a lot.
Yeah, we're going to commence one today. You have to probate that will before it can really be sold, or administer the will or administer the estate, which means there wasn't a will. But so debt meaning there may be lots of creditors, lots of money owed out there, or lots of lurking potential judgments or liabilities because of excessive debt. And what's the other thing I said? Divorce. Yeah, I mean, there may be interests out there that really haven't been taken care of yet.
Right.
So
okay, well, good deal. So if folks want to find out more about Jacob Title, where do they go? Do you have a website?
Yeah, we do have a website, jacobtitle.com.
Okay, that's easy.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, and we have a good presence on social media. And thank you for helping me have a presence here with you.
Oh yeah, happy to do it.
I tell you, I do watch you. You have some great stuff. The numbers show that a lot of people see you, and so I'm real happy to be here.
Well, we're
Stan
happy
McDonald
to
at
have you.
Jacob Title.
There you go. And also you do the real estate attorney work if someone needs
That's
that,
right.
so
We
they can
do.
get all
We
their.
do.
Hey, this has been a pleasure. So, how many of those kids are still home?
Well, just one.
Okay.
Yeah, just one.
What are you going to do when that one's gone?
Two that are married. Oh gosh, I don't know.
Boy, that's going to be a quiet house.
I've never really known anything different than a house full of kids.
Very good. Hey, Stan, it's been a lot of fun. We'll do this again.
Okay.
Hey, if we can be of service to you, don't forget, just go to revolved.com, or you can call me anytime at 679-0704. We'll see you next time.